Hey guys, Brett White's here. It is a tough day for this hardcore Ozzy fan. I've been that way since I was in high school. I got to meet Ozzy back in 1986, which I'll get to in a little bit. So Ozzy Osbourne passed away at 76, and it hit me hard. It really did. You can hear it in my voice. And I found out at work today. It was around 1:30 this afternoon. One of my coworkers and friends came up to me and said, "Hey, sorry to hear. Did you hear what happened?" And I said, no. And he said, Ozzy. So I Googled it real quick. And yeah, sure enough, Ozzy Osbourne dead at 76. So let's talk about it. And I'll share some stories at the end of the video. I'll show you some pictures of when I met Ozzy in 86 and some other pics. So yeah, thanks for watching. Let's get to it. On Ozzy's Instagram account, it says, "It is with more sadness than mere words can convey that we have to report that our beloved Ozzy Osbourne has passed away this morning. He was with his family and surrounded by love. We ask everyone to respect our family privacy at this time." So the way I became such a hardcore Ozzy fan started when I was in high school. I was dating a girl named Leanne, really nice girl, a little shy. And we'd just been dating a few weeks, and she broke up with me. I'm sure I wasn't the best boyfriend in the world. But anyway, she left me, and I was a little sad about that. But she left a legacy with me that neither one of us intended. She left a copy of Blizzard of Oz in my car, a cassette that she owned, and she left it into my car. And me and my friend Johnny started listening to it. We already knew Crazy Train, Blizzard of Oz, one of his, when Ozzy, after he had left Black Sabbath, he came out with 2 solo records with Randy Rhoads, Blizzard of Oz being one of them. Incredible record with Crazy Train and Goodbye to Romance, and just a great album. And No Bone Movies. My friend and I started listening to this album. My friend Johnny Holloway, who I've talked about on my channel before, the guy that we would play Mario Brothers, the 2-player fixed screen platformer for hours and had so many adventures back in the day. We started listening to this tape. Now, we already knew Crazy Train, and we knew Black Sabbath songs, some of the more popular songs with Ozzy, but we really started listening to Blizzard of Oz, and we're like, wow, this is really good. All these songs are great, not just Crazy Train. And we really got into it, and we listened to it over and over again. And we got Diary of a Madman, and when Bark at the Moon came out, we got that. And we went back and bought a bunch of, Black Sabbath albums and just listened to Ozzy over and over again. He quickly became our favorite of all time. And that was me, Johnny, and Johnny's brother, Benny. Ozzy. Yeah, we just listened to him. And that was sort of the soundtrack of our lives growing up, going to concerts. We went to a bunch of different concerts, and a lot of times we would listen to Ozzy on the way to the concert, and on the way back, we'd stay up all night just driving around like crazy people, going to any place we could find that was open 24 hours, like Waffle House, or we'd go to the midnight movies, or we would go to just walking around Safeway because it was open. We'd go to Whataburger, any place we could find that was open 24 hours. And in the car, more often than not on these trips, we would crank up Ozzy. And thank you, Leanne, for leaving that cassette in my car. We didn't speak much after we were dating. I don't remember the circumstances. She was kind of shy. But anyway, very nice girl. And yeah. So yeah, R.I.P. Ozzy Osbourne. And like I said, me and Johnny and my friend Bill and some others got to meet Ozzy back in 1986. He was in Fort Worth, Texas with Metallica, and Metallica was opening for him, and it was the Master of Puppets tour, and it was Ozzy Ultimate Sin, if memory recalls, and just an incredible show. And it was interesting. So during the concert, bathroom break or whatever, I would hear people saying, wow, Metallica was incredible. They'd never heard, it was fairly early in Metallica's career. A lot of people hadn't heard of him. And, they blew Ozzy off the stage. And I'm like, yeah, Metallica was great, but Ozzy's the king. Anyway, so earlier that morning, my friends and I had gone to Sound Warehouse, a record store where Metallica was appearing that day because they were playing with Ozzy that night. And they were in town to, for the show, but they also did a record store appearance. So back in the day, it was a lot easier to meet celebrities than it is now. Oftentimes they would set up at record stores or in malls or car dealerships or places like that, just public places, heavily trafficked places where they could meet their fans, and oftentimes it was free. You could get free autographs. The record store, would want you to buy a record ideally and get it signed, so it was a win-win proposition, and the entertainer, the musician, would get some promotion out of the deal. But anyway, so after meeting Metallica, we went back home. We did kind of play hooky from work that day to meet him. But hey, I was 19 years old, and it was a huge deal to meet Metallica. It was during the middle of the day. So anyway, later that night, we went to go see Ozzy and Metallica at the Tarrant County Convention Center in downtown Fort Worth. And it was an awesome show. Metallica and Ozzy were at the top of their game, just phenomenal. And I was loving every second of it, and it just got better. Even better after the concert. So we hung around after the concert. Now, a lot of times, unlike normal people who after a concert would just go home, a lot of times we would hang around the back of the venue where the tour buses are, where the entertainers are leaving, the back doors or whatever, or we would go to the nearby hotels, like we met Paul Stanley and Queensryche and Black and Blue and a bunch of other bands this way. Met Eric Carr, the late great drummer for Kiss, and met quite a few celebrities, rock musicians, even met some basketball stars, but met quite a few celebrities this way, just hanging out at nearby hotels. But with Ozzy, what we did was we were kind of hanging around in the back just to kind of see if we could catch a glimpse of them, maybe going to their tour bus or going out for a smoke or whatever. And we went back there, we saw this big tour bus, and it was really fancy. We walked around to a couple of different places in the back. By the time we got back there and we knew where to go, the band had piled into this tour bus. We saw this massive, really fancy tour bus with these, murals on the side and stuff, and like, that's got to be the band. And we went and got our cars and kind of parked nearby because everybody, was leaving the concert. And this was a while after the show. And we kind of parked our car where we could see the van or the bus, the tour bus. And as it took off, we followed it and we followed it. We followed it maybe about 45 minutes or an hour outside of Fort Worth to a place called the Iron Skillet, a greasy spoon, sort of like Denny's from hell or something like that. And yeah, we didn't know how we were gonna, how long we were gonna follow them out of town. We might have followed them, they were headed west. We might have followed them all the way to Abilene or Lubbock or El Paso or to California to their next gig. We didn't know where they were going. This was before social media, when it was easy to find out a tour schedule or whatever. We weren't even thinking that way. We just knew we wanted to follow Ozzy and maybe possibly meet him or get a glimpse. And so we followed the tour bus, to the Iron Skillet. They pulled over, exited, and they pulled off in the big parking lot at the Iron Skillet. What they were doing was switching buses. They were going from that tour bus to another bus to continue on, probably to the next concert venue, the next town, and where they were going to play. Maybe it was the last show of the tour. I have no idea. I haven't really looked up their tour schedule that year. Anyway, we followed them, and we exited when they did. We parked, and we tried to be as cool as possible, but they started going inside. Sharon, Ozzy, Jakey Lee, the rest of the band started going into the restaurant, and we kind of followed them behind. And before they could get inside, we asked if they wanted, I think it was before they went inside. Can't remember, or it might have been, I think we actually caught them on the way out. I don't remember which. It was a long time ago. Anyway, the main thing I remember is meeting them and what I said to Ozzy. Anyway, so outside, right in front of the restaurant, and there's another story too with something the waitress did in there that was funny. Right outside of the restaurant, there, in the lobby there's a few arcade games, including Pac-Man. And so as they were there outside, kind of hanging out right in front of the restaurant, I held up 2 quarters in front of Ozzy and I said, "Do you want to play Pac-Man?" He goes, "I don't play." And I believe that's all he said. He said, "I don't play," which is so Ozzy. And I believe that was right after we had met him to get photos with him. And yeah, we had our cameras, and we took cameras to a lot of concerts, even though we had bad seats often and would just take, pictures that weren't great. We had our cameras and film with us, thankfully, and we took pictures with Ozzy. And infamously, Johnny does not show up in the picture of Ozzy. It's him, and he gets cut out of the picture, unfortunately, but luckily Turned out really good, that picture of me with Ozzy. And when we approached him, we didn't care about Sharon, not because we didn't like her or because anything we'd heard about her at that point in 1986. She was just no big deal back then unless you were in the music industry. Yeah, she was Ozzy's manager and everything, but we didn't care. This was before the talk show she was on. This was before the Osbournes TV show and all of that. We didn't care about meeting Sharon. It meant nothing to us. So we were all about meeting Ozzy, and to a lesser extent the band, but it was mostly just about meeting, one of our heroes, Ozzy Osbourne, and it was just legendary. And we kind of followed him inside the restaurant at one point during this time, during this, and we were just out of our minds. We tried to keep it cool. We weren't, acting too crazy or anything. We were just kind of saying hello and, what big fans we were, typical stuff. But as soon as they walked inside the restaurant, there was a waitress there. She kind of looked like Florence Jean Castleberry from the sitcom Alice, the Southern woman that was a bit of a hoe. Not that I'm shaming. Anyway, she liked her some men. Anyway, so this waitress, she looks up and she sees Ozzy. She's in the middle of her shift. She's got her, pad and, waitress costume on, or uniform on and everything. And she goes, Ozzy Osbourne, excuse me, in my restaurant. Ozzy Osbourne. And she was screaming this. And they thought it was kind of amusing, and it was pretty hilarious. She was so excited. But anyway, guys, over the years, so many memories of seeing Ozzy in concert. But yeah, just today I want to reflect a little bit on just the passing of Ozzy. I never cared anything about all the stories you heard about Ozzy when he peed on the Alamo, not knowing. He claims he didn't know it was the Alamo because he was just so drunk. He was walking around San Antonio, and he just, saw a building to pee on. And then later he got banned from San Antonio for many, many years. And that I wasn't concerned about, even like the costumes and the demonic imagery, all that stuff. It was cool and all that, rock on and everything. All that to me was secondary to the music and the hanging out with friends, listening to the music, and Ozzy's voice, which was so unique, so different than anybody else in the history of hard rock, heavy metal, whatever you want to call it, rock and roll. And just, he was a great front man, a great presence, walking around on stage like he didn't know where he was going to stand, slinging buckets of water on the crowd. And he was just a great presence on stage. Nobody else quite like Ozzy Osbourne. And yeah, I could tell stories for hours, but I just wanted to get on here and just say that I'm pretty wiped out. And I've never really sobbed this much over a celebrity dying. It's weird because on the way home, when I found out at work today at 1:30, I was going to leave at 2, but on the way home, or after I was told Ozzy died, I was going to leave at 2. I'm just going to leave now because I didn't really feel much like working, so I headed on home. And here I am recording this video, and yeah, Ozzy Osbourne, he's got his, he had his faults, obviously, there's infamous stories of drugs and alcohol and all that stuff, the infamous, tour with Motley Crue where they tried to outgross each other. But all along, every bit of that, the stories, even the Osbournes TV show, didn't care much to watch it. It just wasn't my thing. I was didn't care that much about reality TV or what they were doing around the house and everything. I saw a little bit of it here and there just to kind of see what it was, but to me, it was all about the music, the concerts, the YouTube videos of, other concerts I couldn't attend, just cranking up Ozzy, driving around in my old, Mercury Comet with my friend Johnny and some other friends, just cranking up Ozzy as loud as it goes. He always seemed to attract the greatest guitarists. I mean, Randy Rhoads, Jake E. Lee, Zakk Wylde, just the most phenomenal guitarist. And Randy Rhoads went, his guitar work, his classical influenced guitar went so beautifully with Ozzy's voice. It was just the perfect pairing. Unfortunately, it only lasted 2 albums because of the untimely death of Randy Rhoads many years ago when he was only in his mid-20s, 25, 26. And the first time I saw Ozzy was at the Texas Jam. He was incredible. And I remember he played, It was the Texas Jam with an incredible lineup, and it was Ozzy, and I can't remember. Let's see, it was Rush, Ozzy, 38 Special, and a couple other bands. And I remember people were booing 38 Special because they were in a lineup with Ozzy and Rush, and just could not. 38 Special's fine, but man, the hardcore rock and roll fans were all about Ozzy and Rush, and people were booing 38 Special, and they headlined over Ozzy, I guess because they had sold more copies of their last album. Something the management, I don't know how the managers or the management and the venue and all that work that out, and the tour promoter and all that, how they work that out. But I did a video on my channel not that long ago about how I got rid of all my vinyl. Well, most of it. I kept my Ozzy records, including Speak of the Devil. Yeah, cool cover and all. I love it. I like the imagery and the cool stuff and all that, whatever. Crazy. I mean, it looks amazing. That would be a great wall hanging, but it's all secondary to the music to me. If he was just a guy standing there like Pat Boone, just in a suit or something, not moving, but you had the same music, the same instrumentation, I'd be just as big of a fan. Got this great tribute album featuring Randy Rhoads, like on my shirt. Great stuff here. And speaking of Randy Rhoads, Ozzy was just devastated. Ozzy and Sharon were just devastated when Randy Rhoads died in that twin-engine plane crash back in '82, I believe it was. Diary of a Madman. Just awesome. Look at that. Incredibly cool. Yeah, like I said, I do like all that stuff's cool. The Bark at the Moon video on MTV with the Rick Baker makeup and everything. Yeah, that's cool. But it's all about the music. And I remember back in the day, when we were just as hardcore Ozzy fans as you could get back in the late 80s, early 2000s, a girlfriend of our group, and then a wife, she married Johnny's brother, Christy. Christy said, someday when Ozzy dies, it's going to be like when JFK died. Now, that's preposterous, obviously, because a little different. Ozzy's an entertainer. JFK was a president of the United States. And, obviously the world and the country was absolutely devastated after JFK died. But our young lives, our, late teens selves, we thought, yeah, that's just going to be absolutely devastating. And it is. Here I'm sitting here all these years later, and yeah, it's hit me harder than I thought. And, man, it's a bummer. So anyway, guys, check out these photos of just some Ozzy fandom. And when I met Ozzy back in the day, it was... I'm glad I got to meet him. That's all I got to say. So anyway, guys, let me know in the comments if you're a big Ozzy fan, and the stories about biting the heads off. Like one time, CBS or some record company, they were having a meeting with Ozzy and Sharon and everything, and somebody had let out some white doves. It was like a celebration thing, and Ozzy grabbed one and bit the head off of it, and he bit the head off a live bat at a concert, or a real bat, I should say. I think it was dead. But someone threw it up on stage. He thought it was rubber bat. He bit the head off. Yeah, lots of infamous stories. But man, again, for me, it's all about the music. And I hope, these stories that you hear, there's going to be a lot of articles, and they're always going to reference the controversial stuff. But I hope they talk about the brilliance of Randy Rhoads' guitar. I hope they talk about the uniqueness of Ozzy's voice, how just, Ozzy and Randy pairing on like Flying High Again and Crazy Train and No Bone Movies and so many other great songs. Goodbye to Romance. Goodbye to Romance is the song I want at my funeral, And yeah, and then all these years later, I still listen. Each time an Ozzy album would come out, I would listen to it, and then I would hear it a couple times. This is really good. This is really great. This is incredible. The thing about Ozzy's work, the more you listen to it, the better it gets, because it's layered and it's excellent, and it grows on you. It definitely grows on you. At least it does for me. And all these years later, just up until, just a couple of years ago, still putting out great music. And he had the farewell tour, or the farewell concert. And I wonder if he died because that was too strenuous, or if he was one of these people like he held on long enough to see family, or for Christmas, or for some specific event, just held on long enough to do this thing or see this person or whatever, and then let go. Maybe that's how he died. He waited until this show, that gave him the life force, the energy to keep going until, this final show was over. And so, yeah, and speaking of, as each album would come out, I remember me and my friend Bill Pritchett, we used to deliver copier machines. This was back in the early 80s. I remember when Shot in the Dark came out. This would have been around 84, 85. I don't have it all memorized. Sorry, guys, I'm a little verklempt today. When Shot in the Dark came out, that incredible song, Ultimate Sin album, um, it was just such a revelation to hear Shot in the Dark. It's like Ozzy still got it. Just a great, great song and a great album. So yeah, guys, anyway, let me know in the comments your thoughts on Ozzy's passing, and if you're just a pure hardcore fan of his music, or if all the the gimmickry and the imagery and the craziness sort of turns you off. If it did, just give it a listen. It's remarkable stuff. It's better than you think it would be. As a matter of fact, if you're just immediately turned off, oh, I don't like screaming music, I don't like heavy metal, I don't like hard rock, give it a listen anyway. Maybe look up Ozzy Osbourne ballads or something like that if you're just completely turned off by hard rock. As a matter of fact, back in the day when I was basically an Ozzy evangelist or whatever, I would tell people, someone would get in my car, I said, hey, listen to this. And they go, oh, that's really nice. Who is that? It'd be someone that's not into rock or not into metal. That was Ozzy Osbourne. And they're like, what? That's crazy. Songs like Tonight, or like I said, Goodbye to Romance, and in more recent years, Mama, I'm Coming Home, or something like that. So anyway, if you never listened to Ozzy, Beyond Crazy Train and a couple of other songs, give them a listen. A lot of great stuff there. Anyway, guys, R.I.P. to the Prince of Darkness and my favorite entertainer, musician or otherwise, of all time. Tough day. Anyway, thank you guys for making it a little better with some really nice comments on my Facebook posts about Ozzy and things like that. And just thanks for being you. We'll talk to you in another video. Rock on.